Hi.
Tarah, it's great to be here. You know what's great about this? I do a lot of my work in libraries because I find it inspiring to be surrounded by the books, and I love the serendipity of a library. I go typically to look for a very particular book that I found in the catalog, and on the way there, I discover something that was even more marvelous and relevant than what I thought I wanted. And I've had the same experience at Paragraphe Books, that I go for a particular book, and on the way, I find all these books that are even more interesting than what I thought I wanted. And I think of independent bookstores and libraries as really the cornerstone of a democratic, free society. And I think it's important we don't take them for granted.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you for Paragraphe.
Shout out to Paragraphe, absolutely. Okay, so let's jump right in. So my first question is, did you always love to write? Because it seems to be as much a part of you as being a neuroscientist, being a musician. Like, where did this love of writing come from?
I do not love writing, and I hate it.
You've got 6 bestsellers.
I like having written something, but I don't like writing. It is very difficult for me, and I'm not a very good writer. I'm a good editor, which is a very different thing. But Thomas Mann said that the definition of a writer is one who finds writing exceedingly difficult, and that is me.
I think he's a good writer. What do you all think? Good writer, right?
You should see the first 40 drafts before I've had a chance to go over them. And Lindsay here, my editor, helps me go over them. So
shout out to the editor,
yeah.
Lindsay, absolutely. So you give this wonderful clin d'oeil, a wink to Leonard Cohen in your opening chapter with Hello Darkness, My Old Friend. And then your title.
I heard, yeah.
Yeah, and your title is like a classic line from a Leonard Cohen song. So what did he mean to you that he sort of gets that title page?
Great question, actually. The oldest written record we have of music being used for health purposes. I mean, we believe it's been used for tens of thousands of years, maybe 100,000 years. And based on cave paintings, we know music was used for medicinal purposes probably 40 to 60,000 years ago. But we didn't have written language then. We only had written language for about 5,000 years. And the oldest record we have of that is a biblical passage, which is that King Saul would have fits of depression and he wasn't able to govern the kingdom. And a young David, the same David that slew Goliath with the slingshot, happened to be a skilled musician who played the lyre. And there's this biblical passage that David would play the lyre and Saul would no longer be depressed. And Leonard Cohen worked that into the song. I heard there was a secret chord that David would play and it pleased the Lord. And so I wanted to make reference to that, but in reality, I couldn't figure out how to do it. It was Lindsay who came up with the title. We went through about 50 titles over 4 months, and we couldn't come up with one that really worked. And I think Lindsay emailed me at like 6 in the morning once and said, I've got it. And she was right. And so I contacted Lorca and Adam Cohen, who are Leonard's children, and I asked them permission to use it.
I love knowing the history of that song. I did not know that that's what the second verse meant. So that's already well worth coming. I feel to know the first verse.
Yeah, and of course Leonard, spent a lot of time in the plateau near where I lived. So,
nice, that's beautiful. So before we get into the music part, I do want to talk about the brain. I want to read it because I won't get it wrong. 80 billion neurons, trillions of connections. I think we all have an understanding that we use only a very, very small part of our brain, but I want you to talk about the power of the brain. There's so much in your brain.
Hang on, we don't use a small part of our brain.
We don't?
That's a myth.
Oh, another good reason to have been here tonight. Now we know that that's not true.
We use all our brain all the time.
So talk to us about that.
Well, I mean, there's this myth that you use 10% of your brain. No, that's not true.
Show of hands, who's surprised to hear that? What? Really? Jeez, okay. All right, well, you guys are good, because I thought that was true. So talk us
A lot of people thought it was true.
Okay. So talk us through about how the brain processes information and what it does really well.
Well, so the way we used to think of the brain was that different regions were responsible for different things. And we now think of the operations of the brain as more distributed. And so we talk about circuits that are spatially distributed. And we can locate a nexus of a certain operation. We say, well, this is auditory cortex here. But there's more to the story than that. Everything is massively interconnected. And in terms of hearing, all the information that you have about sound, picture yourself listening to an orchestra or in a crowded cafe trying to follow a conversation. There's a dense stream of undifferentiated sounds that hit your eardrum, causes it to move in and out. And as Al Bregman at McGill used to say, the process of turning that wiggling in and out of your eardrums into some representation of the world is as though you went up to a pond, you stuck a cork in it, and you watched it bobbing up and down. And simply from that bobbing up and down, you were able to figure out whether there were boats on the pond, and if so, whether they were motorboats or sailboats, in which direction they were going, and how fast, and whether there's fish, and how many, maybe there's some kid throwing rocks in there, all that information just from that wiggling up and down of the cork is like your eardrum. So to make it shorter, the sound goes from your eardrum into various parts of the brain, and the pitch of a sound, that is the note, the duration of the sound, the loudness, they're all processed in separate circuits. The pitches are bound into some representation of a melody or harmony, the durations into a rhythm and a meter and a tempo, and it comes together later in the brain, about 40 thousandths of a second later, and you just hear it as music. And we know that this is separable because we've seen patients who lose one of these and not the other. They lose rhythm, but they retain pitch or vice versa.
Incredible. So much of what you talk about in the book is how music can contribute to healing, how it can soothe us, how it can calm us, how it can remind us. But I want you to talk to something you addressed in the book was that you wanted to back that up with science. So how do you do that, and why is that important?
Well, so a lot of intuitions that we have about the world turn out not to be true. We think we know things, and the job of the scientist is to show through experiments that we do. My colleague Jeff Mogul is very much more eloquent talking about this than I am. But I mean, just as some obvious examples, for most of human history, we thought the Earth was flat. It just seemed so obvious, right? I mean, how could it be anything other than flat? But science showed us that it wasn't. And more recently, we were told things like, well, echinacea will help cure the common cold, or vitamin E will help prevent cancer. It turns out those things are not true at all. Scientists take observations and turn them into studies. And so in the case of music, we had a lot of stories, but as we say in science, the plural of story is not data. The plural of an anecdote is not data. You have to collect the data in a controlled fashion. You see this most clearly in drug studies, where you've invented some new drug, you think it cures some malady, and so you give that to people, and then you give them basically an inert pill. Because some percentage of people are going to get better anyway if you do nothing. So you want to be sure it's the pill. So with music, why do we have to know that it works? Well, if people are going to turn to music for treatment, for injury or disease or any kind of malady or illness, if they're going to turn to that and not do something else, you want to know that it works. And this gets back in our current memory to the Steve Jobs problem, which is that Steve Jobs was diagnosed, as many of you know, with pancreatic cancer, and he was told he had a short amount of time to live, but the doctor said that they had some things they could do to help him. He didn't like what he heard, so he went to a guy named Dean Ornish in Marin County, California, and said, "Oh, I can cure your cancer with diet." And so Steve Jobs decided to forego traditional Western medicine. By the way, there's no such thing as traditional Western medicine. and he decided he would have alternative medicine. And there's no such thing as alternative medicine. There's just medicine and then stuff that doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, or if it hasn't been shown to work, we call it alternative. But as soon as it's been shown to work, it's just simply medicine, right? So this whole idea about alternative medicine is kind of misleading. But he followed this course of alternative medicine until he almost died. And then when he went back to the conventional doctors, it was too late. So I think
I like that.
particularly if you want Health Canada to pay.
Particularly,
yeah.
you need to show it, absolutely. You mentioned that people who are very musical can be accessing a different part of their brain. And I'm just kind of curious how you explain sort of the prodigies. Like, how do you explain the Mozarts, the Beethovens? Even like Elton John never took a class and he was able to play music inherently. How do you explain what they can do?
Well, so prodigies are simply people that showed an early interest and ability. But when you really look at it closely, they put in the work. They showed early promise. But another myth, Mozart wrote his first symphony at age 4? No,
Not true.
He wrote his
We're myth busting today.
Yes. He wrote his first symphony at age 9, which is still impressive. But it's widely believed that his father, Leopold, one of the great musicians and great musical tutors at the time, actually wrote a lot of it. And a colleague of mine at Carnegie Mellon did a wonderful study to try and figure out, was Mozart a genius out of the box? And how might you answer that question? Well, he made a very simple assumption. I love this. He figured over the course of Mozart's career, some works are going to be performed more than others because some are considered better than others. And so he looked at everything Mozart ever wrote as a function of when Mozart wrote it, and he tracked how many performances they were by symphony orchestras over like a 50-year period. And he looked at all the recordings that were made. And it turns out that the stuff that Mozart wrote before the age of 18 is rarely performed, not highly regarded. It's only performed in the context of like a full Mozart cycle, right? They're really curiosities. And so the real test is, if Mozart had died at age 16, would anybody be listening to his music? No, it wasn't particularly good. We're only interested in it because the guy who wrote that stuff ended up writing some amazing stuff later. So same with Picasso. You can see an exhibit of Picasso's childhood sketches. They're pretty good. But if he had died at 15, they would not be in museums. It's just because the kid who drew them became Picasso.
I love that way of seeing. I had never thought about it before like that, so that's very interesting. I love the idea.
Just not put too fine a point on it, but if you work it out, Mozart had to put in 10,000 hours of practice before
to get where he could be.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I love how you write about that sound is a disturbance of molecules until it hits our brains and eardrums. I actually had to stop and reread that one myself. And I've told so many people about that this idea that sound is in a way soundless until it hits our eardrums and our brains. And that really, I was like, oh, that's wrong. And I love this idea. Sound is a psychological concept. I just want you to talk to that a little bit because it's so interesting.
Well, so this may sound a bit pedantic or semantically nitpicky, but by analogy, I think it's easier to consider light waves don't have any color. It's when they interact with your retina and the complicated neurochemistry of your brain, you assign color to certain wavelengths. Your internal experience of red or blue is entirely in here. A measuring device doesn't see red or blue, it counts the frequency or measures the wavelength. And our internal experience is not necessarily reflective of the true state of the world. In fact, when you say that something is blue, it isn't blue, it's everything but blue. Blue is what it's reflected. It's all the colors but blue. Blue is what gets reflected off of it. So it gets very complicated and philosophical. With sound, all that we have are the disturbance of molecules in the air. They hit the eardrums, they cause them to wiggle in and out. And from that, your brain extracts meaning. It extracts speech and music and laughter and crying and waves crashing and leaves rustling and all of that. And so, technically speaking, sound is a psychological construct. It takes a brain for it to be sound. Otherwise, it's just molecules moving.
So fascinating. You tackle Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. There were some really tough parts of the book, reading parts of it, and beautiful parts about how music impacts people who are living with these conditions. And one of the things that really moved me was when you talk about and was a beautiful way to phrase it, the beauty of memory, even though it is lost. Where did that come from for you?
Well, I think the most clear-cut cases of these are people with advanced dementia, advanced Alzheimer's, memory impairment that's profound. And what can happen at that stage of disease is that you no longer recognize your loved ones. You may not even recognize yourself in the mirror. And you don't know where you are. And all of that is just deeply unsettling and disturbing. And people who are experiencing this typically have one of two reactions. They either fold in on themselves and stop paying attention to the outside world because nothing in it makes sense. They become withdrawn. Or they become violent and angry because nothing makes sense. Glenn Campbell, the great singer who toured after he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, towards the end of his life, he became violent, and his wife had to put him in a facility because he was beaten up on her. He didn't recognize it, he didn't know what was going on. But if you can play music to people in that state, in either state, particularly music from their youth, it reconnects them to a sense of self they had utterly lost contact with. And the reason that is, those are computer scientists in the audience, memory is first in, last out. The oldest memories are the last ones to go, the most resilient to disease or disruption. And so you play somebody, it's a lovely scene in the movie Alive Inside, a clip that's gone viral where Henry Dwyer, an elderly man who's 90 and just sat in the ward catatonic, not communicating with anybody. Somebody brings in an iPod and plays him the music of his youth, Cab Calloway. And he suddenly perks up and he starts singing along and he's reconnected with this, oh, that's who I am. Something is familiar finally. And that kind of therapy, if you want to call it that, playing music for just an hour to somebody in that condition, it can last for a week or more, where they suddenly are engaging with the world, they can start having conversations again.
Very powerful.
That's the beauty of them.
Yeah, that's the beauty, and I love how you phrased it. It really is very special. And healing is so much a part about what you're exploring and what you're writing about. And these conditions include friends, colleagues, musical mentors, people that mean a great deal to you. And I wonder, was it hard for you to see that, to write about it? Or was it inspiring because you saw that power and that beauty of music in the most challenging of situations?
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to is that when I started writing the book, I wanted to get in touch with musician friends who had and get their own stories. So the book it's basically, those of you who haven't read the book, I read about, Lindsay and I read about 4,000 papers, and we extracted them, science of them, and there's a big notes section at the end. Jeff Mogul helped with a lot of the sections of the book. Wonderful neuroscience, and a smarter guy than me. But I wanted to populate the book with stories from friends of mine or other musicians I didn't know. Springsteen, who had a story about music helping him through difficult times. And I called Bobby McFerrin, who I know for many years. We performed together. We performed together just a month ago. But he told me when I called him that he had Parkinson's, and he described how depressed he had been, and that the act of making music for him is really therapy for him. He feels lousy when he sings, he feels better, and all the more so when he sings with the crowd. The way he does his shows is he gets everybody in the room singing with him. He divides them into sections, and it's conducting an orchestra of audience members. It's exhilarating for him, and it's helped him get through the disease. So it wasn't difficult for me to write about these things because each story that I had, I found inspiring. and I hope you will too.
I
Joni
definitely
Mitchell was
did. Joni Mitchell, there
yeah.
were many people that you mentioned, but there was a heaviness to it too, because it's like, it's hard to read about it, it's hard to know they're going through it, but you saw the beauty in it.
You know, did you ever watch Westworld?
Yes, I did.
There's that character Dolores,
Mhm.
and she had this wonderful line where she said, you know, the world had, you know, is beautiful and it's ugly. I choose to see the beauty of the world.
Very, very nice. As a society right now, I would say we are very preoccupied with aging and aging well. We're living longer. And after reading your book, I think we all understand that we have to have music be a bigger part of our life. So what do you tell people this is how you can incorporate music more? Is it just as simply as listening to it more often? Like, what is your advice to people in terms of how we can help our brains age better?
Well, so we've done surveys in my lab where we ask people how they interact with music, and we find that 75–80% of people, at least some of the time, use music in the way they might use drugs. They have certain songs they go to that will help them relax, the way a beer might help them, or a song that they would use as a social lubricant at a party, the way a beer might be a social lubricant at a party. Different kind of music to help them wake up in the morning or to motivate them to an exercise workout, kind of like caffeine. So people are already doing it. I think the idea is to trust yourself, trust your judgments. Musical taste is very, very subjective. There's no one song everybody likes. There's no one song everybody hates. Our tastes are personal. And so music as medicine doesn't mean a doctor is going to prescribe music and write down the name of a song or an artist. But a music therapist, a certified music therapist, can help you choose music that you will probably like and find helpful based on your own listening history and your own taste. And of course, your tastes change over time. Even if you have a favorite song, you don't always want to hear it right now. And so one piece of advice is to trust your own intuitions. If you want to be more systematic about it, it's fun to work with a music therapist. And state of Massachusetts, I learned just last month when I spoke there, now offers vouchers, 12 vouchers for free music therapy sessions to anybody who wants them. It employs musicians and it gets people engaged in this whole business of music therapy. But the bigger piece of advice I have based on my reading of the research is musicianship. Listening to music is one thing. It engages every area of the brain are mapped. But playing an instrument engages all of them in a more meaningful way because of this new idea we have called embodied cognition. You learn a lot about the world by interacting with it, with your hands, your fingers, your body, your legs, your feet. And so playing a musical instrument confers a lot of benefits in terms of cognitive reserve. It builds up massively new and important pathways. It won't stave off Alzheimer's, but it will give you so much cognitive capacity and reserve that if Alzheimer's sets in, you may not notice or have any symptoms for years beyond them. And it's never too late to learn an instrument. If you already play an instrument, I'd say pick up a new one, learn a new repertoire, play it differently. If you don't play an instrument, I'll tell you a story. My 80-year-old grandmother, well, my grandmother was born in Germany and she immigrated. My father's side, my grandfather was born in Toronto. On my mother's side, that grandmother was born in Nazi Germany. And she came to the US as a refugee. And around the time she was 80, she told my mom and me that she was so grateful that a country had taken her in. After 2 other countries had turned their boat back, the United States took her in. She was so incredibly grateful that she sang every morning a song written by another Jewish American immigrant, living in Berlin, a song called God Bless America. She sang it every morning and she felt it was her duty to do that. So when she turned 80, my mother and I went to the mall and got a little $80 Radio Shack keyboard. And we got pieces of masking tape. She never played an instrument, but we put numbers on the masking tape on the keys. So she could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so she played it right away, a little haltingly. And by her 81st birthday, she had removed the pieces of tape because she'd memorized it. By her 82nd birthday, she'd worked out this kind of rudimentary left-hand harmony. And she played that keyboard every single morning with a sense of purpose. It gave her a sense of agency that she could still learn new things and fill her home with music. She played that keyboard every morning until she died at 97.
That's a beautiful
Helene was
story.
yeah.
Helene, just beautiful. I think it leads really well what you're saying into my next thought and question was another moment in the book where I had to be like, I had to like pause. And it was this line that the secret chord is you, that it's you and you and you and me. And I loved that so much. And I have to ask, like, as a communicator and a scientist and a musician, what is it that you want people to walk away from with your book? What do you want them to remember, to take away?
Well, it's interesting that you ask.
That's my job.
Yes. That's why you have the awards for asking. I had a friend named Dan Dennett, and he was a philosopher at and people would ask him, "What do you do for a living?" He'd say, "I'm a philosopher." And they'd say, "What does a philosopher do?" And he'd say, "I ask questions." And they'd say, "Well, that sounds like a rather puny job." And he'd say, "Ah, but I know which questions to ask." The infinity of questions. I think what I'd like people to take away from the book is an appreciation for how complex and interesting the process of taking in and performing music is. It's beautifully complex. And yet our reactions to it can be as simple as feeling connected to another person or to a bigger idea. And I think a side effect of the book is that there's a QR code on the back. And we created playlists on all the major streaming services. And there's about 275 songs mentioned in the book. And you can listen to them in the order they're mentioned. And so one of my secondary hopes is that somebody will discover some song that they've never heard before that they just love. And they range from, I mean, there's so many different kinds of music, delightful things in there, including a couple of songs I think are the most perfect songs ever written. One of them is
Which one?
One of them is called Pluto by Claire and the Reasons.
Okay. And the other?
The other one is How to Grow a Woman from the Ground by John Rousseau, based on an old indigenous people's fable.
Okay, beautiful. So if you want to hear the music in the book, as Dr. Levitin mentioned, there is a QR code on the back of it, so you can get all of those. I found it interesting. Who else reads acknowledgements in the back of books? I always read the acknowledgements. Yes, I love reading the acknowledgements. And your acknowledgements, the first line was that this book was born out of a sense of unease. And I wonder, did you find that ease now that the book is out in the world?
Yes.
That's good to hear. What do you love to play when it's just you and you alone, your music, your instruments? What rows that boat?
Sometimes it's a sailboat. The music fills the sail, right? I feel like when it works, I feel like I'm not rowing.
Okay.
In different moods, I play different things. When the pandemic started, I decided I wanted to play 3 pieces on the piano well. That I would be happy if I could do that. So I've been working on them ever since, and I think I've got 2 of them down.
What are the 3 you have to tell us?
Chopin's Prelude in B minor, Beethoven Moonlight Sonata, first movement, and the second movement of the Levitin Sonata. And yeah, I've been performing them, and I learned. I have a mentor named Maria Kodama, who is a wonderful concert pianist. Many of you know her because she was married to Kent Nagano, who is the conductor of the Woodfield Symphony. She's been helping me a little bit with piano, and she says a person can spend a lifetime on those 3 pieces. And I get what she means, because every time I play them, there's something different. And then I play songs that I love that Rodney Crowell, songwriting mentor of mine, wrote. And I like playing the songs that he wrote. Playing a song that I love is different than hearing it. And then about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I began in earnest. I've been writing songs all my life, but I hadn't really put that much effort into them. And Joni Mitchell, who we were talking about, Rodney Crowell, took an interest in my songwriting and mentored me. I don't mean that they wrote with me. They taught me how to think about writing. And then I started writing songs that I wanted to hear. I mean, I got tired of my record collection, and I thought, well, I really want to hear a song like this. I'd look for it, and there wouldn't be one, and so I would write it. So I would say the same thing is true of my books. With each of my 6 books, I went looking for a book that said that, addressed the topic, and there wasn't anything there, and so I wrote it for myself. And if other people want to read it, that's great. That's not why I wrote it.
I think a lot of people do. What's the best advice you've ever received?
I think the best advice I ever received was from my father, who told me I had spent years trying to become a lead guitar player in a heavy metal band. And that was going to be my profession. And I got good enough that I was playing with some good bands, and then one band broke up, and I auditioned, and I got asked back 3 times, and this band that was really fantastic asked me to join them, but not on guitar, on bass. And I was really distraught because I had spent years clawing my way up to the bottom of the California music scene. And having gotten there as a guitarist, I called my father and I said, what am I doing? He said, well, what if you learn to play the bass? I mean, wouldn't you rather be the bass player in a really good band than the guitar player in a mediocre band? And the whole story behind that was that they had been auditioning bass players for a year and they didn't find anybody who's melodic. And they thought if they could find a melodic guitar player, they could get him to switch, which was sort of the story of Paul McCartney moving from guitar to bass. So they said, we were looking for somebody who can do that kind of thing. So I thought, wow, that is really good advice. And people often, students often ask, what advice do you have for a career? How did you plan all these things that you did? And the truth is, I made a lot of plans and not a single thing I planned actually happened. But I followed my dad's advice, and when other things came up, I did those instead.
Brilliant.
And it turned out okay.
It really did. It turned out pretty great, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like my time with Dr. Levitin is wrapping up because I want to make sure that you have time to ask your questions. But for those of you who know my interviews, I always like to end them with rapid fire questions. So I have like 13 or 14 questions. It's just a fun way to end my part of the interview. They're 1-word answers or just a thought, just kind of.
This is like speed dating
Right?
questions.
Right? It's just a way to get to know you a little bit better before we move into the next section. Okay, you
I
ready?
didn't know this would be on the test.
This is sort of the spontaneity. Here we go. Okay, ready? Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Dawn or dusk?
Dawn.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Glass half full or half empty?
Half full.
Last song you listened to?
Oh, Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen.
If you
I
could,
heard it I was on CBC radio today. It's the last song I played.
it's funny, that song was in my today.
Yeah.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Wow. I get a superpower.
You could have one. Which one would it be?
I have no idea.
I'll tell you what mine is, and maybe I'll inspire you. I would fly.
You would fly.
I would fly. If I could have a superpower, I would fly.
Huh. I think if I really could only have one
Yeah.
superpower, it would be to say whatever magic formula is required to get people to stop fighting.
Okay. Something yet to do on your bucket list.
Well, the big thing is I want to make a 3rd record of it.
Perfect. If you could have a beer with anyone, or a tea, or a glass of wine, living or dead, who would it be?
John Lennon.
Favorite concert to date?
Stevie Wonder, the Los Angeles Forum, the fulfilling this first finale tour.
Do you like to dance?
Yes.
Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
Climb a mountain? Are you crazy?
Dark chocolate or milk chocolate?
Dark chocolate?
When was the last time you stayed up past 3 in the morning?
Oh, well, I've been on a 30-city tour and I'm time zone hopping, so
Okay.
probably last night.
All righty.
It wasn't really 3 in the morning, it just, yeah.
And the first album you fell in love with?
The first record I fell in love with was a 78 RPM. Not an album, but it was the Syncopated Clock.
Ooh,
You know this?
I don't.
It's an old jazz number. Some people here are not.
Okay. Well, speaking of music, it's a good thing to end on. Before we get to your questions, I have a thought. We've been talking about music, and I'm wondering, maybe Dr. Levitin would be open to playing some music. How do we all feel about that? Round of applause. We're gonna bring a guitar up and let's, not that sound, not that. Wonderful, you're up for that?
I wasn't expecting it, but I'll do my best.
Wonderful.
You hear me?
Yes.
Well, I thought I might play it, since you asked. You want to hear a couple of songs I wrote?
Yeah.
These are just songs I wrote because they're what I wanted to hear. Wasn't this in tune when you bought it? I tune because I care. All right, I'll give it another shot. There is delight in singing though none hears beside the singer. There is delight, there is delight. There is delight in praising though the praiser sits alone and though the praised far off from him. There is delight. All that came before us is just light, and so despite the pleas and pleasant dreams, we take the night. Warmer climes get brighter plumage, softer winds the breeze of our high heights. Spread your wings to find what's right. The siren sings, the ships at sea, though none hears the silent mast. There is delight, there is delight. There is delight in facing life, light in cursing death, and though the bind is at sea, there is delight. All that came before us is just light, and so despite the pleas and pleasantries, we forge the night. Warmer climes get brighter fringe, softer winds the breeze, around high heights tender strings to find what's right. Is delight in calling out your name, though you're not here beside the singer. There is delight, there is delight. There is delight in ties that bind, delight in knowing we are one. Though we are lost, there is delight. All that came before us was just light, and so despite your pleas and pleasantries, we cling. Warmer minds get brighter, stronger winds and breeze about mine heights, play the strings to find what's right. Play the strings to find what's right. Play the strings. Find what's right. Another one? She didn't like that one. Maybe this one more. Yeah, change humidity, expand and shrink the ways. Sorry, that's negative two. This song I wrote, it's a duet between a waitress in a coffee shop and a truck driver. She sings first. Standing at the counter of the daily cafe, I never did marry. My heart is a brand new cup unfilled with dreams, so sweet to carry. His turn. I bring the cold to your cold nights. I bring the fire to your stove. I try to catch your eye to serve. Give me one more smile for the road. I pour a lonely cup of coffee. Bring it slowly to my lips, like the objects in the mirror of the truck you drive up here. Oh, honey, I'm closer than I can hear. I know how you like your hash browns, crispy and golden. I cut your grapefruit segments, and then I get that special spoon. You deserve a perfect man, one who won't drink or fight, and lights the burned out cigarettes, and we all use light. And pour a lonely cup of coffee, bring it slowly to my lips, like the objects in the mirror of the truck I drive here. honey, I'm closer than I feel. One morning in May, and broke out in the fire. Digby and everyone else raced out. I fell down and thought I heard the angels quiet. I ran to her, held her high across my chest, laid her down outside, kept her from the wind. Cradled her head gently in my hands. As we closed, I poured a loving cup of coffee, raised it slowly to her lips, and as she raised her head, eyes were bright and clear. She said, honey, I appear. We both said, honey, sir, we appear. Thank you.
Hello. Very beautiful. I love
Thank
the
you.
lyrics. I love the storytelling. Another round of applause for Dr. Levitin. I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to ask a couple of questions. So do you want me to run down there? I'm going to hold on. Hold on.
Where am I going to go? Good thing we have a sound person. You know, I think I'll hear the questions and people just talk about it.
Okay, maybe I'll get a couple more. Last time I saw, I was like channeling my inner Bill Wellington.
No.
I can hear you, Carol. Carol Katz. You want me to write a book about people who only have one arm, basically, to just play the guitar? No, I will not do that. I do not have a book. That's this book. That's this. Yeah. You want me to write another book of music as well? Oh, I'm sorry. There's some confusion here. Yes, I have another book coming out in January, but it's the exact same book. The British publisher, in their infinite wisdom, are giving it a different name, but it's the same book. And they don't release it till January, and it's only available in the UK. So sorry for the confusion.
Anyone else? Sir, why don't you stand up here for a question?
So the 10,000 hours theory was kind of misquoted by Malcolm Gladwell, which led to some confusion. Malcolm seemed to imply that if you just put in 10,000 hours, you can become an expert. And it doesn't work that way. But the 10,000 hours theory is based on the work of Herb Simon and John Hayes of Carnegie Mellon and Dean Simonton at Davis and others who have looked at expertise in a variety of domains like chess playing, literature, music, becoming a great martial artist, and it seems as though to become a world-class anything takes at least 10,000 hours of training. Again, putting in the 10,000 hours doesn't guarantee that you'll do it. But nobody's been able to find a counterexample of somebody who reached world-class expertise. Now, expertise is, of course, a social judgment. It depends on things that we as a society care about. We care about playing chess. We care about playing music. We care about being a great basketball player, things of that nature. I could become the world expert at folding my own arms in probably an hour, but that doesn't seem to be things that people care about. So where I could become an expert at pronouncing my own name, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about some sort of social judgment about what we care about. And the only counterexample I could think of was Stevie Wonder, who had his first hit record at age 12 or 11. And if ever there was somebody who just seemed to have popped out of the womb being musical, who we know about today, it seemed like it must have been Stevie. And I had the opportunity to make a record with him. And one of the first things I asked him was, do you believe in this 10,000 hours thing? And he says, not for me, man. He put in a lot of effort. He was banging pots and pans before his mother would buy him a drum set. And he was singing, and he remembers struggling, working really, really hard, and having trouble in the early years. So. Thank you. Yes, Renee Fleming has a new book out called Music in the Mind, an edited volume. Yes. I'm repeating the question. Renee Fleming edited a book. It's a big edited volume, a bunch of short pieces. Here it is. I contributed. Library has it. I contributed a chapter to it, as did Richard Powers, and yeah. What does it mean to be musical is one of my favorite questions. For those of you who are scientifically inclined, I wrote an article with that name in the journal Neuron. And the long and short of it is, I think to be musical doesn't necessarily mean that you can play an instrument or that you can even play it technically well. To me, musicality is a sensitivity to music as a listener, to be able to be moved by music, and as a performer, whether you have great technique or not, to be able to move people with the music. So give me sloppy guitarist, give me Neil Young, who sings like an alley cat, plays guitar like a machine gun, any day of the week, over somebody who has great technical facility on the instrument, never makes a mistake, but can't really connect with an audience's emotion. This is beginning to feed back. There's another mic on that should be. Yes. Yeah, so the question was about the genetics of music, and is musicality genetically determined, or some people, and this gets back to the prodigy question. Um, that microphone might be on.
Stop now.
There's probably not a gene for music because it doesn't work that way. There are so many ways in which genes differ from one another. There aren't enough single genes to go around, but there are probably clusters of genes that confer things that could be helpful to music, such as good auditory memory, the willingness, if you're talking about a performer, the willingness to spend a lot of time in a room alone. That's a personality trait. Stick-to-itiveness. I think in every case of somebody who showed musical promise early, they still had to work really hard at it. And there are a lot of people who didn't show musical promise early, who worked hard at it and came out as fabulous musicians anyway. So there is a little bit of a, it's not a perfect model where everybody who shows early talent becomes musical and everybody who doesn't. It's confounded, of course, with environment and opportunity and culture and your family and the people you know. And I'd say, you mentioned neurodiversity. I've had this weird and wonderful life where I've gotten to meet many of my musical heroes, and I know lots and lots of famous musicians. And as a group, I would say almost every one of them is on the autism spectrum. Even the ones you would think are not, the ones who just seem to exude so much sensitivity and humanity without naming any names. All I can say is that I'm thinking of one person in particular who everybody would say that person's music is so sensitive, and that person must really understand human emotion, and that person really connects with me. And what I can tell you is that every ounce of empathy, sensitivity, and love that person has goes into the songs, and there's none left over. Can't do it.
Got it.
So I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Levitin for gracing us with his presence tonight and answering the questions and being such a lovely guest. Like, congratulations on everything that you've done. It's really awesome. I want to thank all of you for coming, for your questions, for listening, for being such a wonderful audience. Everyone who's joining us online, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Dr. Levitin has graciously offered to spend some time signing books. So if you have them and you want him to sign them, he is there to do that. Take some photos if you like. So thank you once again for being here tonight, and we'll see you next time.